Hi everyone, Dr. Bruce here. So this week's short topic video will be on cell transport mechanisms. I made this little infographic here to help you remember and understand some of the cell transport mechanisms. So the first thing you want to know is that substances always move from higher to lower concentration until reaching equilibrium. In other words, things go from where there is more of it to where there's less of it until there's an equal amount of it on each side of a membrane. So we have a cell in the middle, and the first mechanism is simple diffusion or diffusion. So one thing we have to be concerned about with regard to cell transport is the cell membrane. So remember, the cell membrane consists of a phospholipid bilayer. In diffusion, lipid-soluble substances can move directly through a cell membrane. So they will move from a higher to lower concentration. So say there's more of something outside the cell and less of it inside, it's going to move from outside to inside the cell. Fortunately, substances like oxygen and carbon dioxide are lipid soluble, so that helps with diffusion of gases with regard to like the respiratory system. Other substances like steroid medications are also lipid soluble. Therefore, you could apply a steroid, to the skin, and then it would go into the skin and move across the cell membrane. All right, so that's diffusion. Substances move until reaching equilibrium. So let's say that a substance is not lipid soluble. So how does it get into and out of the cell? Well, that's where we have facilitated diffusion. So here we have protein channels. These are little doorways that are specific to a substance. Like say you have a sodium channel, a potassium channel, a calcium channel, and so on, glucose channel. Those are doorways for just those substances. So the same rules apply that apply to diffusion in that substances will move from higher to lower concentration until reaching equilibrium, but now they are moving through a specific protein channel. Okay, so let's say that's all you have is you have diffusion for lipid-soluble substances and facilitated diffusion for non-lipid soluble substances, and then you say ready, set, go, and everything moves down its concentration gradient until reaching equilibrium. Well, what happens? Well, the organism dies because what you need in order to keep an organism alive is gradients. You need gradients. You're going to find out in physiology that everything runs on gradients. Your heart, your muscles, your brain, especially the sodium and potassium gradients. So these gradients have to be maintained. In other words, substances have to move against the gradient. They have to move from lower to higher concentration. And this doesn't happen naturally in nature. You need energy to do that. And that's where active transport comes in. So in active transport, we have transport proteins that use energy in the form of ATP. So you need that energy to make these gradients. So let's say, for example, the sodium gradient, you have to build up that gradient. And these active transport proteins, specifically the sodium-potassium pump, builds up the sodium and potassium gradients. So in the body, there's always more sodium outside the cells than in, and always more potassium inside the cells than out. But in order to do this, you need ATP. So where does the ATP come from? It comes from the energy systems in the cell, the anaerobic systems and the aerobic systems. The aerobic systems are more important. They require input like carbohydrates, fats, and proteins, and they need oxygen to make ATP. Those are the main systems. The other systems, the anaerobic systems, are there to help out the aerobic systems. They only produce energy for a short amount of time. All right, so those are the three main transport systems. The other one that's not on here, but is similar, is osmosis. And osmosis really just has to do with the movement of water across what's called a semi-permeable membrane. So a membrane that only allows water through. And water will always move toward an area of higher solute concentration. So they say water follows salt. Wherever there's more solute, that's where the water goes. So, and that's important with regard to kidney function. For example, let's say that you have high blood pressure, hypertension, and you eat a lot of salt. Well, the kidney's trying to get rid of that sodium, but it can't really get rid of it quick enough, so you retain it. You're retaining salt or sodium. So water then follows that salt and you retain water. So you're not getting rid of the water, you're retaining it. So that means your fluid volume will go up, and that has a direct relationship to your blood volume, and your blood volume is directly related to blood pressure. So fluid volume, blood pressure are all related, and that's because of osmosis. So you retain sodium, you retain water. Water follows salt. All right, so hopefully this helps with your understanding of cell transport mechanisms, and we'll see you in cyberspace.